Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Helena, brilliant to have you joining us. And to start with, please introduce yourself and tell everybody about the great work that you do.
Thank you very much for having me, Helen. I'm Helena, and I'm basically a life coach specialized in expat women in Brussels. So I do basically program in coaching to find yourself again, clarify where you want to go, and take the necessary step for it. And I also organize training in companies at university to basically prepare anyone or to integrate any expats to become an expat or that has been an expat for a long time and linked to you, and that's how we first met. I also wrote a book in that the journey that any expat takes from the start, pre-departure to arrival, and maybe pre and basically repatriation as well.
Okay, thank you. And I'm conscious that not everybody listening to this or watching this might be familiar with the term expat. So could you just give us a little short introduction of what that is all about?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for clarifying. It's basically anyone living away from home, and that could be, for example, even just an exchange student traveling to for abroad for just a set period of time of 6 months. But in general, it's more linked to work, and it could be an assignment of a year or more. And then when you stay there for a long time, you can find yourself a little bit more completely integrate in the culture and therefore being more of an immigrant. So I feel like the notion of expat is a bit more shorter term than and then when you really sink in, it's a more immigrant.
Right, great, thank you. And we're going to choose a card from the Values Jam deck now. So to start with, I'm just going to tip the cards out and give them a bit of a shuffle. And how many piles would you like me to make in front of me?
Ooh, should I challenge you with a high number? No.
You could, as long as you don't say 60.
Exactly. 60. I will do, I think, four. Sounds good.
Four. Okay. And so I'm making these of different sizes.
Mm.
And pile one is on my left and pile
Okay.
four is on my right. So which
Okay.
number between one and four would you like?
Three, I will take.
Pile three. Well, you've done very well there because that's the smallest pile.
Easier.
And so we have eight cards. So a number between one and eight.
Let's say six.
Six. Okay. So the card you've chosen is this.
Ooh,
And
that's
the
gonna be
first
interesting.
question is, what does love mean? And what does it look, feel, and sound like?
Ooh, it's gonna be such an interesting time. So I think love for me is a feeling of being probably feeling that you can be completely yourself. So when you whether you love or you are being loved, that you feel you can feel completely yourself and feel accepted for who you are. It's I will say it translates to something warm inside your body. I'm very into energy, so it's kind of a warmness in your body, and it's something that you want to share. So it's something that you kind of want to be able to share to more people. What else? It's for me, it's a lot linked with friendship, family, not only romantic relationship. So it's also whatever relationship is important for you. It's a sense of wanting to cheer for each other, wanting to help each other, and being as happy of your success than their success. And yeah, and if you can love a person unconditionally, I feel like that's real love, but because you love them for who they are. So I feel that could be the definition.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you said about it being what a subject to choose, and it's so broad and deep, right?
Yeah,
So just responding to a few things that you've mentioned, I found myself writing down two contradictory things. So
yeah,
first I wrote uh, inner energy because I felt that, when you love something, there's something inside that is screaming with joy, right?
yeah,
And it's interesting that you said that you pay a lot of attention to energy, and I'd written that down before you had actually said the word. And then the contradiction pieces I also wrote down out of body. because somehow for me, when you love something, it's like you're not in charge anymore.
True.
There's something outside taking
Yeah.
you somewhere. Um, and then when you were talking about the different types of love, it struck me that perhaps there's a continuum, which is degrees of how personal it is.
Yeah.
So you can love something and then you end up loving someone unconditionally, like you said, and there's
Mm,
maybe stuff in between.
yeah.
Um, okay. And what about the metaphor part of that question then? So when you think of the word love, what images come to mind? What feelings come to mind? And what sounds come to mind?
I love that. I also feel like when you were speaking, passion also came to me. Like it can be, for a project, or, for example, I'm very passionate about the expat topic, and for me, I also feel like then your day to day can feel lots of love and kind of excitement as you describe. And then if I had to put an energy sound, or I think energy is in between. Yeah, I feel that you feel a bit disconnected to the world. Like it's really lightness, which I really agree with you, for sure. And the color is, yeah, really orange, I will say, more than red, because it doesn't. Yeah, I feel like it's more stable. Or red feels like that it's a decision you have to take fast, whereas orange is way more like a fire that continues. So I like that. And in terms of sound, I think for me is laughing. Like when you really laugh and you can just express, the lightness and happiness all around. I think that's, yeah, probably my favorite.
Great answers. And so I'm going to choose a different color to you. So
Yeah,
for some reason, I've got purple. So
nice.
a really deep purple for some reason. Um, and something that's coming through from this conversation so far for me is this point about contradiction, because you mentioned lightness, and I
Mm,
agree with you. But for me, at the same time, there's intensity. So it's
completely.
like, lightness and intensity.
Mm,
Then in terms of sound, yeah, I love the sound of laughter. Feelings. I go
totally.
back to what I was saying earlier about not feeling in control, feeling as though something else is taking charge, if you like. And I was curious when you mentioned the word passion, because I found myself asking the question, and maybe you can answer this. What is the difference between, and what are the similarities between passion and love?
Whew, not an easy one. And also, firstly, I feel like it's super interesting because I was about to say that there is this lightness, but at the same time, you do feel super anchor, or as if your body was just not stronger, but just heavier. So
Yeah.
I definitely like this opposite. And so, whew, that's a difficult question. Can you repeat that one, maybe? Then I can.
Yeah, so it's just exploring and playing with the
Yeah.
similarities and differences between passion and love. And passion feels kind of more intense,
Mm,
perhaps. Um, a passion project like you described with your expat work, but then you do love the topic of expats and
mm,
everything that goes with it, but it feels softer. Love feels
yeah.
a bit softer, and passion feels a bit more kind of energetic somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe passion also has kind of an end to it, maybe in a way. Like
Okay.
more can be maybe cycle, I feel like. Or at least for me, I get really passionate into some topics, then a little bit less, then maybe it continues. But when I love some topic like expat and others, then I feel like you can really continue for a longer time. Like it doesn't stop
Right.
interesting
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
But maybe it's less, that I need to know everything straight away. It's more like,
Yeah.
oh, let's learn step by step and still being captivated, but not consumed too much by it, maybe.
Are you familiar with Simon Sinek's work?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I don't know whether you will have seen this, but he's got a short video where he talks about the difference between intensity and consistency. Have you seen that one?
No, but it looks nice.
Yeah, I mean it's
Something in it.
so it's nothing to do what we're talking about. I'll explain what he talks about first and then explain why
Mhm.
it's come to mind. So what he says is that um, he gives the example of oral hygiene. So
Okay.
it says, you know, the intensity piece is that you book your annual checkup
Mm,
and you pay for it and you go to the dentist and you've had your teeth polished and so you
yeah.
feel great for that day.
Mm,
And then he asks the question, but is that what stops your teeth falling out?
mm,
And of course the answer is no. And
yeah.
the answer is it's cleaning twice a day, 2 minutes a day, whatever it is.
Mm,
And then he says, and if I miss one, will my teeth fall out? And no is
yeah.
the answer. And how many times can I miss? Well, we don't know. And
Mm,
then he relates it to the workplace where he talks about, you know, the annual leadership conference where the top people in an organization are in one place. They
yeah.
have a motivational speaker, everybody's excited, but then everybody goes back to work.
Mm,
And he talks about the importance of the day to day stuff, the consistency
mm,
being more important than that really extreme
yeah.
intensity. And it strikes me that maybe there's something related to passion and love, where
Mm,
passion are these peaks of energy, but they're
yeah.
short lived perhaps. And love is this more even level continuously.
Completely, and this idea of balance, I think, came to mind as well, to my mind as well, to kind of be able to have maybe both at a different time, but maybe yeah, true. The love is kind of the foundation, and then comes other things that you maybe need to kind of have peak and challenge and change as well, which I'm a fan of. But yeah, I think it's the underground and kind of the foundation of the house, probably.
That's a great way to look at it. So we've started off kind of quite philosophical. So let's get
Yeah.
really practical now.
Mhm.
So where have you noticed a lack of love?
Oh, in the world or in
Either it can
distribution?
be in a personal setting or a professional setting or something that you've observed, something that you've been involved in personally. It's your choice. What example comes to mind where there is an absence or a lack of love?
Um, I think maybe I will come back to that later, but it's also very interesting to see how love is expressed across different culture. Because for me, while traveling, I could really feel that for some part, I didn't feel as loved as others, or just the way that you express in a love relationship, in the friendship relationship can be very different and misinterpreted. So I hope to believe that everyone generously wants to act out of love, but just it kind of gets mistranslated in the way. I hope so. But for me, love also comes with care, probably a lot. So if you in some organization or in some event, you can really feel that there is a lack of care, or yeah, and care for others. And I probably feel like it's maybe fear of not being loved enough or not finding your space. And then probably people just kind of like react to that by being out of care to protect themselves.
Mhm.
So probably yeah, that's how I will view it.
Okay. And my example, I think, well, at first, excuse the pun, I loved what you said about misinterpretation. And I think this is something very common around values words, that we use the word, but then we don't understand that other people might have a different interpretation of it.
Yeah,
Um, and in one of my books, we give the example of respect. And in the book, we tell the story about two people, one of whom has invited the other to be a guest at their home.
yeah.
And they both say that they have the value of respect
Hmm.
important to them. So they both agree that
Yeah,
respect is important. So the visitor is arriving at the address in his car and he receives a text from the host.
mm,
And he opens the text and it says, "Hi, hope you had a safe journey. The key to the front door is underneath the plant pot at the front. Please let yourself in. There's food and drink in the fridge. Help yourself. Uh, Go upstairs. My room is the first on the left, but choose any other room up there
Mhm.
and make yourself at home. I'll see you later. And the person who sent it thinks, because I believe in respect, allowing them to feel as though my home is theirs, that's going to go down
Mhm.
really well. And
Yeah.
so I'm pleased. Now,
Mm.
the person sitting in the car reads the message and is totally offended
Mm.
because they say, if this person respected me, they would have taken a day off work. They would have
Mhm.
been here to greet me in person.
Yeah.
And so that's, for me, the best example I can think of where two people say they believe in the same thing, but actually they're
Yeah.
like that. So that
Yeah.
was your point about misinterpretation, right?
Completely, and that you the more like stereotypical maybe example, but it's also time. When you agree in an international setting to meet at a certain time, you can really feel that every culture plays a role, and then some people do feel affected when others are late, and for them it's not really a big deal, and they are not kind of like disrespecting. They are even, for example, if you compare Belgium and Germany, in Belgium when you're invited somewhere, you should be they're like late at least 15 minutes. That's what we say. So if a German person comes on time, we feel like it's a bit, disrespectful. Whereas for them, it is respectful to come on time. So I think time is a very cool also notion that is very interesting.
You've hit a button for me there because
Yeah.
yeah. So two stories come to mind. One was it was my first day in a new job,
Yeah.
and so I set off in order to arrive 1 hour early in my new job.
Mm.
And the train stopped in a tunnel, no signal, no means of communication, and I ended up being late on my first day of
Crazy.
work. It was like,
Yeah.
it freaks me out thinking
Yeah.
about it
I can
actually.
imagine. You just are like, I planned so hard for this,
I know,
and then
I
it's
know,
not
and
happening.
and actually, you saying that, all of that planning doesn't matter, does it? Because
No.
you're late, and that's
Yeah.
it. And then the other one was, have you worked with many people from South America?
Yeah.
So you know that they have a different view of time than
Yeah.
Belgian people.
Completely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's especially I was in host family there, then also working afterwards with them. But in host family as well, it was kind of okay. How long are we? How long will it take to go to the restaurant? It's like 5 minutes, and then 1 hour later, you're like, that's a lot of 5 minutes together. So it's kind of knowing that you have to let go and that they wouldn't be planned. And one of my Brazilian friends used to say, it's cool in Belgium, you have train schedules. Like we don't in Brazil, they just come when they feel like. So it's maybe it has changed since then, but it's very interesting for sure to have
Yeah,
this notion.
I was delivering some training in Mexico for people from all over Latin
Yeah.
America, and they were continuously late on the first day, arriving and then the morning coffee break and then lunchtime. And I said to the organizer that we would not complete the training if this carried
Mm,
on. So could I try something? And she said, well, that's just our way. And so you're
mm,
not going to change anything.
yeah.
So what I did was when they all came back after lunch, I said to them, you've been late arriving at coffee break and now,
Mm.
and do you want the good news or the not so good news? So somebody said, can we have the good news first? I said, yes, I accept that I have accepted that you will always be late.
Mm.
And they're all happy, sort of. And then somebody said, what's the not so good news? So I said, okay, here's the deal. Maximum 5 minutes late. Is that okay?
Mm.
And they agreed, and it
Yeah.
worked really well. So
Mm.
it's this thing about, I don't know, what is that? It's partly about respecting other
Mm.
people's ways, but then maybe setting a new form of agreement in
Yeah.
some way and a reason for it. And
Mm.
if the reason is strong enough, then it overcomes the challenge, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But in some culture, I do feel like I had that in Japan, which is such a different culture than Belgium. I sometimes felt like, how much can I show respect, care, love without, compromising my in value and my culture, and kind of how can you adapt and still being yourself. And that's then I feel like maybe love to yourself, compassion, and how can you find a good balance is not always easy.
So right. And I went to Frankfurt to finalize a deal with somebody from Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And it was a lady and her sister, and we agreed the deal. And as we were saying goodbye, I just said, I'm so happy. Um, is it okay to have a hug? And of course,
Yeah.
it's totally inappropriate. And yet, like you just said, I was finding it a real challenge then because I wanted to express my joy in some
Yeah.
way, but I knew that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do, and so
Mhm.
that's why I asked, and then they were very clear, no, that's not what you do.
Yeah.
But it's really, there's tension there, isn't there, between your feelings and expression versus your empathy for the other person.
Yeah. And that I think comes really across in the five language of love. I don't know if you've read this book on how, and it's mainly for love relationship, but it can be for any, how your way of communicating love could be very unrelevant for the other person, even if you're from the same culture. So I found that very interesting as well. And I feel like touch is one thing. And in Japan, people do not, they wave at each other, but that's it. And I didn't realize how isolated it felt for me to not, be able to hug my friend, or we kiss on the cheek in Belgium to greet people. So it was very distant. So it really made me feel isolated.
Yeah. And do you know, you probably know this, or maybe you know this better than me. Do you know where that's come from? Why such differences in different cultures?
That's a very good question. I don't know if it's just kind of like through the years. I wonder if since everything came with, like first agriculture and like weather and all of that, if it did not maybe imply that maybe if you were very sweaty and, it was kind of, if it was really warm, maybe then touching was
Yeah.
inappropriate because you can share illnesses, or maybe because it's cold. Like I have no idea actually, but I guess it's probably slowly kind of just the impact and effect of the hygiene at that time, illness, weather, and type of work that they were doing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, let's move on to, oh, this is an interesting one. So this might be too personal for
Mhm.
you, me, I don't know, but let's see where we go. When have you experienced love?
Whew, I have been lucky to experience, I feel, through different ways. I think for me, I feel the more love when I just feel like someone is as cheering for me as I will be for them. I don't know if it makes sense. So I feel like that's for me something when I can really share my high energy, my happiness, and that other person is just kind of like feeling it, and that then it's kind of like share, and we kind of, yeah, it's kind of feels like we are connected. So I feel like when I feel a connection, that's when I have love. So I have that a lot with some of my close friends, when we either do work together and we are like happy of what we achieve, or when we at some time as well, experience vulnerability or difficult hard times, and we can see that we're very compassionate for each other, and there is no judgment. There is really just kind of who we are as person, and feeling supported, listened to. I think that really helps. And then a big one is also my family. I feel we are very into just also again offering compassion, offering help, and not judging or not wanting to change it, so we can be very honest. And then in love relationship, I think that's for me as well, when I can feel like very vulnerable and very myself, and just feeling like I can be accepted for the entirety of who I am, with the highs and lows as every person experiences.
Hmm. And I've got three examples. So
Yeah.
first is my mum.
Yeah.
So she was a single parent,
Mm.
and I didn't grow up in a very privileged environment. And she struck this balance between providing enough protection on the one side, but then giving enough freedom on the other, even though she really didn't understand what that might involve. So
Yeah.
she had no notion of what going to university was like, for instance,
Mhm.
but she encouraged me to do that
Yeah.
without knowing what it would bring. Um, then my children is another one. So, and in a strange sort of way. So I love watching my children become beautiful adults,
Mm.
but kind of from a distance. So
Yeah.
love sometimes implies that you're really all over each other kind of thing.
Mm.
And I like to give them their space. And maybe that's related to that first story about my mom.
Mhm.
And then the final one is a bit random, but I follow sport and I follow a football team, and I have done since I was like 7 years old. And there is some totally irrational connection for me with that football team, and there's no
Nice.
logic behind
Yeah.
it whatsoever, but it exists.
Mm.
Don't understand it at all.
Sometimes I feel you don't have to, it's kind of just how it feels, and it's a good,
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
nice
And
to
I
just
wouldn't
enjoy
have missed it for the world, but it's not so easy at the moment because they're not doing so great.
that.
And I was speaking to, so are you a sports person at all?
Yeah, yeah, I play a lot of sports. Then,
Okay. So a friend of mine follows a football team here in the UK that is not in the top level. It's the next
yeah,
one down. And he told me that he decided to take his young cousin to the football matches when he was, I think, 8 years old. And then after a couple of years, as this boy was getting older, he said, Uncle Ian, do we have to go to every match?
to absolutely every of them, every one of
Yeah.
them.
Now, in Values Jam, there's also the opportunity for you to create your own question. So
Mm,
I'm going to invite you to do this now. So ask your own question about love,
yeah,
beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how. And if
okay.
you have the answer immediately, then feel free to share. Or
Yeah.
if you'd prefer me to go first and you follow, then that's fine
Mm,
too.
okay. So with love, I think for me, a very, but that's maybe a bit still philosophical, but it's kind of like to understand how does love can love stop? I think that's a very yeah, challenging question.
How can love stop?
Yeah,
Okay.
if it actually does, or maybe it doesn't, but yeah.
Hmm. All right. So, um, I think the obvious one is if there is a breakdown, a severe breakdown in the relationship between the two people involved,
Mm,
if it's two people. So
yeah.
something really bad happening to
Mm,
get in the way. Although you could argue that if the love is strong enough, then it can overcome some things and maybe lots of things, if not all things.
yeah.
Um, then probably another one that might make love stop is complacency.
Yeah.
So when you take it for granted and you don't honor what you once
Mm,
enjoyed so much because of maybe other things or it becoming too normal.
mhm,
Um, and and final thing for me would be external factors and circumstances. So, for instance, the work that you do around expats, for instance,
mhm,
geographic mobility, it feels to me, might be one reason that love stops for some people
yeah.
because they're separated
Mhm,
and maybe they are able to deal with that in the short term, but eventually things happen and
mm,
it's more of a challenge for it to be maintained. So those three, a bad thing happening, complacency or taking it for granted, and then external factors. What about you?
Yeah, I quite like the idea of kind of it just, at some point you don't feel like it anymore, more because of what you were saying into, I believe we wanted to optimize everything, kind of believing that there is always a way to do better and optimize, want it more. And I do feel, and kind of when we start taking something for granted, it's sometimes easier to be like, oh, then it must be the person. So let's, kind of get another friend or get another lover or, just change. And I do feel like that can be a bit dangerous in our current system because we are more used to kind of buy something new than fix something, and we always feel like beginnings are going to be easier or lighter than really getting the work done. So I think that is definitely something that is interesting to see. And of course, sometimes you just can't find the energy to continue the relationship. But if you could maybe sometimes stop a little bit, take a moment for you, and that's what we do a lot in coaching, is kind of like introspection, reflect before acting, because I feel like we act fast and we are in this really rhythmic society, and sometimes if we dare to stop a little bit to really see what's going, I feel like maybe there will be less break in a relationship, because also sometimes it can be our ego or whatever, we feel like we react as fire, whereas we could actually make it a bit more calm in our mind. And the second thing, as you said, with distance, because I did experience love a relationship, especially in distance, or when I was traveling with my family as well, distance, or friends from home. And I feel like from the moment you still have something to share. So even with friends, I felt that I could feel like we are going on so many different paths. If you still have something, that you share, it could be just your love at some time for each other. But if you keep it a desire to really want to nurture something, sometimes it can be even starting a small project or just daring to take the time to hear the other person and what they've been through, what they are passionate about. I feel like that really helps if you really want to keep that relationship alive, is to, yeah, try to have something still in common, or to take the time to listen to the other passion, and then you learn also so much, which I love. But yeah, otherwise it can feel very, very distant, and then you just lose that love because there is nothing that links you anymore.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
It does, and I'm just reflecting on what you said about in modern society, how, like, I'm thinking about disposable fashion
Yeah.
and what that looks like when you apply it to love, right? So it's just a
Yeah.
series of relationships that you acquire,
Yeah.
and a bit like I'm not a big fan of social media, but I this is how many times I've been in love, isn't that great, and all the
Mm.
rest of it, and that's better than
Yeah.
only being in love with one person
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Yeah, so that's a bit weird. And then the other thing you made me think about was nature, actually. So
Mm.
um, when you get consumed with this busyness, I'm just thinking, for instance, during COVID, I remember going for a walk when we were allowed to,
Yeah.
and consciously enjoying it much better than before COVID, when my mindset was I'm going for a walk and I'm coming back, and
Mm.
that's it, done.
Yeah.
Whereas there, during COVID, I started to listen to the birds singing, for instance,
Mm.
or looking at a leaf and a bud and looking at the different shades of green and the sun shining through the leaf and the veins on the, all of that. And, I can imagine standing there now looking at this that I'm describing to you, thinking, I love that. That is just
Mm.
amazing. Whereas in the busy world that you describe, you just walk past it, you don't even notice it. And again, you can apply that to relationships, I think.
Yeah. And that makes me think of children, that are just away with anything that comes. They're like, wow, this is exciting to discover everything for the first time. And I do believe that when you try to be more in that mindset, it just seems to be a bit, you feel in love with your surrounding, I feel like, almost. So you kind of yeah, are amazed by anything, and then it's also lighter, and it's such a great feeling for sure.
Hmm. All right. And so what we're going to do, there is one final question, but the
Yeah.
penultimate question is this, and it's a big one. So
Oof.
how could more love improve the world?
Yeah, that's I actually it's interesting because I was like, oh, I wanted to say something, but I was like, I feel it's not the right moment, so it is now. I do believe, and I think that's because of all the movement I have done, you are a lot alone. You have to reinvent yourself where you are, which focuses you a lot on being lonely at time, and having to find inside of you what how you can kind of make it work. And I do feel like a world could be a better place if actually people love themselves and could feel right at home, or in love with wherever they are, then I feel like you also give back that energy. So I feel like it's probably as selfish as it seems, or introspective. I do believe that right, a really famous quote says that artists are really good at like trying to dig and like trying to find, to connect, and as much as possible go to the trauma and everything, because as more as they get closer to themselves, they get closer to others. And I do feel that by trying to look at all your vulnerabilities, all the difficult time, and accept all of that, you also accept the others more, because you realize that every part of you has been lived through different people as well, and people have had the same stories. So maybe it's really linked for me to compassion, like first starting with auto compassion and then compassion that you can have with others, probably, or
Mm.
towards others.
And so yeah, so we're going to end on a what seems like a very deep point. I think you flagged something really important, which is, we tend to be encouraged by all of like the systems and ways in society to just demonstrate achievement
Yeah.
and at the expense of everything else.
Mm,
So imagine the very successful business person who maybe has ruined their marriage, maybe doesn't have a strong relationship with their children, maybe has no friends,
yeah.
and just has lots of money.
Mm,
Um, yeah, and also in the workplace, I mentioned earlier that's where I recognize an absence of love. A lot of the time, it's because leaders are lacking in confidence and self-love, and
exactly.
so they end up taking a kind of mechanistic view of people
Yeah.
and working out how they can get the most out of the person without thinking really about the person themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm just reinforcing that I think you've identified a really important point there about how maybe we maybe we are not encouraged and don't have the environment to look at ourselves as deeply as we could slash should,
Yeah.
and that if we could do that more, then the world might be a better place.
Mhm. Yeah, completely. And I feel like it's also probably in the workplace, especially we believe, or even in friendship, that was a lot along the case for me, and probably still a little bit, that I believe I will be loved for what I do. So if I achieve a lot of things, then, I will be loved by my parents, by my friend, by my partner. And when you start to kind of being like, trying to love people for who they are, because often that's what we do. We don't love someone because they are they have achieved something great. We can be inspired, but we will love them because we love the way they did it, or the love that they share with their family. And I feel that was a big shift for me to realize that whatever I do, it's more like how I feel and how I speak about it that make people love me more than what I actually achieve itself for.
Yeah, no, so thinking about sport,
Yeah, that's a very good link. I
well,
don't have that
yeah,
too.
I'd be interested in which sports people you kind of admire most. For me, it's not necessarily the ones that achieve at the highest level all of the time and get all of the championships or
Yeah,
whatever it is. For me, it's the ones that achieve those moments of brilliance and difference that other people can't do and perhaps are flawed in some way,
yeah.
um, because that just makes them feel more human.
Mhm.
And that's where I tend to associate. What about you in the world of sport?
Yeah, I think I quite like that. And also to feel that they have, achieved something good for like or past, what they could expect from themselves. Like the fact that, they go over what's achievable, or that they really learn something about themselves that make them go there. I feel like that's amazing. I really like any story or any movies about, sportive and athletic people, because you really see the determination, dedication, but often also just at some point, how a moment kind of changed, but it was not actually one moment that all TV saw. It was kind of like multiple moment and change, and just the trust in like, I can do this and do it over and over again. That's, I feel like, very impressive, all the dedication it takes.
Yeah. And actually, I'm not a big fan of golf. Do you follow
Mm,
golf at all?
no, no, actually not.
Does the name Rory McIlroy mean anything to you?
Yeah, yeah, he does.
So, he's just won
Yeah.
the US Masters,
Mm,
and he's completed the Grand Slam of
mm,
championships in golf, and he's
yeah.
the only the sixth person in history to do that.
Mm,
And there is a video of him when he's 10
wow, so cute.
being asked,
Yeah.
and he had started to play golf. And the question to him is, what ambition do you have in golf?
Mm.
And the 10-year-old Rory McIlroy says, to win the Grand Slam championships in golf.
Mm.
And that, I just love that story.
Yeah, yeah. And that, I feel that's why I really see the difference in that, in the US versus Europe or Belgium, is that when people have dream, I feel like in the US everyone has a lot of dreams, believe also has a maybe entrepreneurship idea or something that at some date they might do it or not, but they love to think about it, and everyone seems quite supportive. Whereas in Belgium, I feel like we're often like, how, but like this is not really realistic, or it's, you can't really dream as much. And I do feel like dreaming is such a big part, and whether you achieve it or not, it just puts you in such a cool space. And for you, even, you probably don't even need to achieve it to already have had, so many steps in between that were super important for you and inspiring.
So important for children. So I was talking to somebody about this just in the last maybe month or so, and I shared a hypothetical situation of a teacher
Yeah.
with a bunch of kids, maybe at that age of 10 that we
Mm.
were just talking about. And the teacher says, so what do you guys want to be when you grow up? And a little girl or boy at the front says, I'd like to be a spaceman or spacewoman.
Mm.
And the teacher says, well, you can forget that. That's a ridiculous idea. So let's just think about sensible things. That's
Mm.
one possible answer. The other answer is, oh, that's amazing. Just think of all of the opportunities that there might be, from designing rocket ships to planning travel in space
Yeah.
to, and all of these things.
Mm.
And that second answer definitely should be the way that we
Yeah,
deal with children expressing their dreams, right?
completely. Yeah, yeah, especially because they change, So if they are like, oh, I want to do this, then maybe the next year is something else. Or if it stays, we need all of those, also impressive career to be there. So at some point, children will have to take those roles as well. So for
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm going to draw this to a close now. And the
Yeah.
final question is this. What are you encouraged to do differently about love as a result of this conversation?
I think I've been already working a little bit on it more, but probably being like, allow myself to be more vulnerable is definitely a thing where I often felt like if you're more vulnerable, people will use it against you, or just kind of see it as a bit of a break. But with all the stuff I've said now of like being really truly yourself and being loved for who you are instead of what you do, I do, and what you mentioned as well, that it makes you more human. I do think that it's important to being as authentic as you are, because it also helps you to have compassion for yourself and therefore shine and probably show love to people that are also, have some breaks like every one of us. Maybe that. Yeah.
And mine is, and I do this? I think I consciously try to do this, but maybe it is always an area that you can always do more,
Yeah.
which is not to take for granted the people that are close to you.
Yeah, I like that
So,
one.
for instance, I've just come back from the south of France with my youngest son to celebrate
Mhm.
his birthday, and we spent 3 days together, which was amazing. And I am just reminded that you can, well, you, yeah, I was going to say you can never do enough of that. Of course, you can't be with everybody all of the time,
Mm,
but it's this thing about choosing moments when you can have quality time with people rather than fall into routine.
mm,
So that's the reminder for me. And
yeah.
to your point about vulnerability, I've really appreciated how authentic you have been on this call today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed as well learning so much from also your idea and view on the topic was very inspiring and interesting.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye.